I can tell you with 100% certainty that the military voice was heard and it was considered.
The microscope yesterday on Capitol Hill, a Senate committee grilling our top brass about the withdrawal. General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told the Senate Armed Service Committee he had advised President Trump and then President Biden to keep at least 2,500 American troops on the ground in Afghanistan until the U.S. could ensure that the country was stable.
And he also said that President Trump had initially ordered all the troops removed by January 15th of this year before pushing the date back to May, which then President Biden extended to August. And joining us with more on his takeaway from yesterday's testimony is North Central College political science professor Stephen Caliendo. Great to see you again, Professor.
Good morning to both of you.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on this morning to talk about this. You know, General Milley called Afghanistan, a strategic failure. Those are his words. Would you say that's too simple of a description?
I mean, it's always too simple because there's so much involved in foreign policy decisions. I think from the military perspective, it's always going to be somewhat different from the political perspective. And that's where I think we saw some conflict yesterday on Capitol Hill. General Milley was clear that the military perspective was heard and considered. We heard his words there just a moment ago. That doesn't mean that it's going to be followed. The President of the United States is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and the president makes a decision on how to proceed, both President Trump and after him, President Biden, of course. And so it's uncomfortable for these generals to have to be embroiled in political controversies, that's for sure.
Well, and speaking of political controversies, Professor, you and I and Anita spoke almost ad nauseum in the run-up to the election about the differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden sort of projecting himself as a straight shooter. And yet we heard Milley basically tell that committee, yeah, I told President Biden, let's keep 2,500 troops on the ground. And then Jen Psaki, the press secretary, seeming to sort of parse the president's words. How bad is this, the optics for Joe Biden this morning?
You hit it exactly right. That's the problem. The problem is not that the president disregarded the military advice or didn't follow exactly what the generals had suggested. The problem is that that he may not have been forthcoming with the American public about why he was making the decisions that he was making, whether that was the extension from May into August, whether it was not leaving any troops there at all. Jen Psaki comes out yesterday and essentially says, look, if we would have left troops there, we'd be in a war right now with the Taliban. We saw what the direction it was going. That's all fine and that's reasonable, but that's not what was discussed a couple of months ago. And so I think that the real political problem is whether Joe Biden's being transparent, or whether he misled the American public, or whether he's telling the truth now.
Yeah, and what do you think about this? Because Republicans are definitely going to try to use this to define the presidency of Biden. Do you think this seriously harms any chances that he might have at winning a second term?
Well, Anita, I think it's really early to start talking about second term, although approval ratings matter and inertia matters. What's really important, I think, is the domestic agenda immediately. What's going to happen with the pending government shutdown? What about the spending bills and the domestic policies that the president's trying to get through? He's having trouble with his own party and certainly having trouble with Republicans in the Senate on that anyway. Having a lack of public support is going to make that all the more difficult. And so you're right about whether it sticks. The problem, I think, for Republicans in this regard is their president, the previous president, President Trump, has been known to fabricate and to lie over and over again, tens of thousands of times during his presidency. And so it's going to be difficult to make a contrast between what the Republicans can offer in terms of leadership and what Joe Biden has done if it's found that he's misled the public on a number of occasions.
Professor of Political Science at North Central College, Stephen Caliendo. Haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you, and thank you so much for joining us.
It's good to see you both, too. Have a great day.
You too. 8:09 right now.